Mr. Anderson.
Hey, my man, how you doing today?
Hey, good, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I have a podcast mic. If this is not coming through very well for you, I can swap it out. I'm just playing in the space that I'm in.
It's actually coming in really well, believe it or
Okay,
not. So that's
amazing.
cool. Yeah. You got my picture I sent you 2 years ago.
I
Uh,
did.
eh,
I did.
it's got to be, that was kind of when you first started in your growth, right? Or sort of the beginning of a major growth change for you.
That's when I went nomadic. Yeah. I was just leaving. I was just finishing up getting rid and selling the house and getting rid of all my stuff so that I could be nomadic. And then a few months after that picture, maybe like four, is when I finalized it and went to Mexico. I was down there for 15 months.
Can you elaborate on nomadic? What do you mean by that?
Nomadic means that I can live wherever. There's no real home base. There's no home. It's not a thing. So right now I'm in Park City, Utah. I'll be here for another month or two. Um, I was in Texas for a month before that. I was
Yeah.
back and forth out of Mexico for 15 months. And it's just it's living a lifestyle that allows me to just be wherever.
Wow.
Yeah. So nomadic just means that I can work from my laptop and so I can be wherever.
Yeah. I don't I don't really have that ability right now with
Sure.
my two young kids running around and the wife. We're
Sure.
pretty it's funny to say you're nomadic. I would say I'm the complete opposite right now. I've created such a like home space that
Hmm.
like I don't have those options to do that, which is
I was
interesting
like
to
that
think
for a long
about.
time too.
Yeah.
I was the same.
It's really interesting to think about though, like the
Yeah.
complete opposite spectum of that. Which I don't think I would
Yes.
mind. Like if I like if my wife wanted to experiment and be like, all right, let's just sell everything.
Hmm.
Let's go to a condo, right? Do some,
Sure.
rent and do a month by month and then see where it's kind of hard with the kid who's just starting school and stuff, but it's an interesting concept.
I and I'm we can turn this on whenever, but I
It's
this
so this is on. We're just going. I'm just
oh,
recording because
amazing.
I want this to be more of just like a feel good conversation, and then and minor edits, probably not much at all.
Okay, great. So a couple of years ago, two and a half, I'm filming a film in Costa Rica for a personal development company that didn't want a sales video. They wanted, we call it like a docu-series, or they wanted a salesumentary. It's a documentary meant around their customers and their products and their services. Totally different than here's what I have. And I'm in Costa Rica. I'm interviewing one of their clients, and he, the husband, was a banker out of New York, and she, I can't remember exactly what she was doing beforehand, but they were pretty home based. And they looked at their life and said, does it require to be this way? They had the ability to be online, but he would have to leave his corporate business. And they looked around, they tried it. She was opening a coaching company and some other things that they were working on. And they had kids that were, at the time when I met them, 13, 9, I think like 7 and 5, something like this. And they said, look, we can sell all our stuff, move to Costa Rica. There's an amazing community of expats, people that live down there. They have a schooling system that allows people to come to school, and also an internationally accredited homeschooling system where the kids can, learn from home. And
Yeah,
when I was talking to one of the daughters, she said, look, I get to finish all of my work inside of 3 hours. Because if when you go to school, most of the time spent is around the mass amount of kids that are there, right?
sure.
And so they finished all their work. They surf every day. They work outside on their land. They grow things. They knew everything about the botany around the home that they lived. Like it was incredible.
Yeah.
So it started opening up more minds of what people are doing, like what they're actually doing. So there's lots of opportunity. And I have two kids that live here in Park City, and so that meant I got to rework some things as a single dad. I got to rework my lifestyle
So what did you
to
see
something
on
that
those
worked for us.
people? those people? Were they like super, did you see like super happy? Like, did they seem super at peace? I mean, what
Yeah, their
intrigued you about
family
them?
was super tight.
Yeah.
Their kids were just, I couldn't imagine a better life than having the kids being able to do work outside and learn about the earth instead of just learning from a textbook. So they got both the textbook and the hands-on experience of what it was like.
That,
And just their family was tight, really
yeah,
tight.
that exposure seems, I haven't actually, I'm not friends with somebody like that. I've never really experienced that. So to hear that, it kind of makes my mind go, whoa, okay, like that actually is going on out there, and that's okay. And that's totally,
Yeah,
it's weird because my mind says I would love to try that, right? And see what
sure,
that's all about. However, you feel so stuck in this box, you know what I mean, that I'm in, even with everything that I'm going through, as far as expanding my mind and my soul and my outreach of beliefs. And it still makes me think, oh man, that's scary, you know.
sure.
But you did that, you took the leap, and you did it, and I don't want to say you're, the last time I talked to you like really one on one was 2 years ago in Utah,
Yeah,
and you were talking about, I believe, I don't know the right word because I haven't even talked to anybody about it that's gone through it. Is like a magic mushroom experience or a psilocybin. I don't know how to explain
mm,
that. You went through that, right?
sure. So I started this process. I started my spiritual awakening, if you will. I started
Okay.
looking if there was more out there about 9 years ago, going through a divorce. And a friend of mine called. Well, I called a friend of mine and said, dude, can you teach me about meditation? Because he had like, during the mortgage crisis, he was a big mortgage banker and
Yeah.
he lost everything. And he went right into this like really like woo woo spiritual community. I was looking at it kind of strange back then. And I called him and said,
Sure.
hey man, can you teach me to meditate? And he said, no, go buy a book. It's like, that's not going to work. And
He just threw you
um,
off. He said, nope, nope, just go buy a book. I'm not going to teach you
yep,
anything.
yes. A month later, he calls me back and said, man, after our conversation, I've been thinking about it. And some other guys have called me, and right now there's 6 of us and we're all self-employed, we're all going through different walks of life, and what I'd like to do is create a mastermind that's men's only, self-employed. Let's just figure out the man's mind. And it started, which has now been 4 different companies of running men's only personal development trainings.
Wow.
So flash forward 6 years, meditation became a pretty big part of life, but not crazy. And then probably a year before I met you, I went into the psilocybin, I went into ayahuasca, which has turned into, well, psilocybin, ayahuasca, San Pedro, um, LSD, in different parts of the world and places that are more legal than this place. I don't necessarily believe in, for me personally, I don't believe in dabbling in my own environment. Like you had said that I have, my home is set up this way,
Hmm.
right? And so when you open yourself up to a new experience, but you have all of the internal mindset connections, all of the hooks. This is my living room. This is my grocery store. This was the school I grew up in. You get kind of opened and then you get closed again because of all of the mental cues, all of your memories hook you. And so you have somewhat of an experience,
Interesting.
but then also your experience is in a closed container. So when I've tried to do things, and I have experimented with psilocybin into my own home, and it helped a lot, but I also know that my experiences inside of what you would call plant medicine um, are far greater when you remove yourself from your environment
Uh-huh.
and then you give yourself some time to integrate before you come back home.
And these were all controlled
Yeah,
environments. And
yeah.
so these, all those words you mentioned, those are just different mind altering
Yeah,
drugs,
I
right?
don't. I think there's like 300 different kinds
Holy
of.
cow.
There's at least 300 different kinds of psilocybin mushrooms, different strands. It's almost like
Okay.
marijuana, right? And then you go into a whole gamut of whether it's a natural product that somehow interacts with the DMT in the brain or
Hmm.
the pineal gland, or it's something that somebody created in a lab. And I always have tried to stay away from things that people that have created things in labs.
That makes
Um,
sense.
just if
That makes sense.
you're gonna do it, then be a little bit more holistic about it.
Yeah.
I have a
And you,
different mindset about those now, but
yeah.
when you talked to me, yes, I was in the middle of something else.
Yeah, it was, and I wasn't even, I was kind of looking at you like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I was also having probably the same thing that you had before you called your buddy, like, what is my friend doing over here meditating, doing
Yeah.
these weird things? And now you
Yeah.
realize the power of it and what it really has done. And I mean, I
Yeah.
can just look at you and like just through this video and I can just see how like content, how happy, how at peace you
Sure.
seem. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
I do.
And it's really cool to see that.
I
You
do.
briefly touched on, and I didn't even know this until our pre-interview. You briefly touched on divorce. You wrote
Yeah.
in books about this?
Yeah. So the first book that I published was in 2014 called The Selfish Divorce.
Okay.
And I had a unique experience because I was going into my senior year in high school when I got my girlfriend in college pregnant. So I was married at 18, divorced by 20, and then spent 8 years single, trying to figure out life like a person would.
In your
And
20s.
yeah, in my 20s. And then I got married again. And we were married for 8 years and had a great marriage. And at the end of it, we just became two different people and grew, which is fantastic. Well, when that finalized, I had the experience of going through a childish divorce when I was 20,
Yeah.
and then something that was much more mature, and where it worked out really well. In fact, where I'm filming this with you right now,
Uh-huh.
um, in Utah, where I'm staying at this moment, I'm in my former spouse's home where she's remarried. She's lived with her husband. They've been married for about 6 years because my two kids live here. And
Oh,
we decided that when I went nomadic, our lifestyle started getting pulled apart because the moment that my daughter turned like 9, she was dancing 6 hours after school a week, and AP classes in the morning, and now she's 13. And so from say 5:30 a.m. until 8 p.m., there's nothing. Like there's no time for a single dad, right? There's life.
yeah.
And our weekends started getting harder and harder because of other things that are going on as your kids got older.
It makes sense. I mean, that's normal. I mean, I
Right.
want to say it's normal. I don't even know if
Yeah.
that's the
Because
right
it is.
word
It's
to
normal.
use. It's
I think
right.
so.
Right.
Kids just grow and they get busy. And so my time with them started getting smaller and smaller. And going into the nomadic phase,
Yeah.
we said, hey, let's try something new. What I'll do is I'll go for 4 weeks, and then I'll come back and I'll stay here for a week. And then I'll go someplace in the world for 4 weeks and I'll come back. And when I'm here, I got to do regular dad stuff,
Oh,
pick them up from school, make them breakfast, hang out. And it gave us actually more time than I had before, more quality time, because again, as a single dad, things just start getting estranged and you get pulled apart. So the 2004 Selfish Divorce book was about how to get really clear on what was important. And what was important for me was that my kids remained healthy and happy. So
yeah.
that meant that I got to do anything that I could to support my former spouse, for her to be healthy and happy, because of she was a mom.
Yeah. And
And it helped create this relationship. And then while I was in Mexico, over the last year, I didn't plan on it, but I finished the next book, which is called Loss, or Love Without Loss, which isn't published yet. We're still in the midst of what that will look like. So maybe then the next couple of months, which is now the expanded version of all of the personal development, all of the ayahuasca, living with shamans in the jungle, like just everything wrapped into
dude,
this.
living with shamans in the jungle. I mean, what?
Yeah. Jungle's become one of
Every
my
minute's
favorite
like a
places.
new. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, you're great. It's like jungle and beach are my favorite places to live.
Cool. That's fun. One of the guys I love following that I'm actually going to be taking his meditation teaching course is David G, and he lives on the beach. And every morning he is on Instagram with his video that he's walking his dog on the beach, so
Yeah,
he loves that too. So there's something about the beach, the surf, that creates that, and they meditate on the beach every day.
yeah,
It creates those vibes. I mean, I don't know. I live in the middle of the city, and
sure.
But yeah, that's pretty cool.
There's something pretty magical. And I bought a little scooter. It's a really crazy story because I went from business, driving my Ferrari, and everything had to look like that. The house, the car, the friends. And I didn't think it had to be like that. It just was, right? I was a creator. I just created more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then when I went nomadic, it was all gone. So there was a month, 2 months in Mexico where I didn't have any transportation at all. I learned to walk to the grocery store. And I didn't know humans had legs that could actually walk to the grocery store.
You're
And
like, I
so
don't have my
eventually,
Ferrari anymore. I sold it. I
I
have to
know,
walk with it.
I bought a $600 moped, a scooter. And I got just as much joy driving that little scooter to the beach every morning to watch the sunrise and meditate on the beach
Yeah.
than I did in the Ferrari. Now, they were completely different lifestyles, and I don't mind either one of them. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with owning the Ferrari. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I also learned that I could have joy in all kinds of other things too. And so that beach and watching the sunrise in the morning it was magical.
That's great. And you don't have a beach near you, right?
No, right now
Right
I'm in the
now?
middle of the mountains. I'm in a
Yeah.
ski community.
Yeah. That's coming up
And
soon there. Are you a serious
it,
skier?
no, I've lived in Utah my whole life. I've
Yeah.
skied and I've snowboarded. I've never taken anyone super serious, but the rest of my family does. They're like skiing every day. There's ski school like kids have ski school during class here.
Oh, it's
So
that.
it's a
Oh,
thing.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, the whole community is built either outdoors in the mountain in the summer times or skiing in the winter. This is where like the Sundance Film Festival is,
Yeah.
and just where everybody travels, Aspen, Colorado, or here.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Um, so a little bit more on your books. I want to touch on it. What did you learn from, like, I guess, like what you're writing, I guess your new book maybe, or your old, I'm not sure which one, but what are some of the things some of the takeaways from it that you can share with people here?
Well, I learned that I'm going to guess at the number because I don't recall it off the top of my head, but it's like 85 to 90% of people that want to start a book don't finish.
Okay.
They just start.
Yeah.
So I learned a process. I didn't use it as much on the second one, but on the first one that I did, where I hired a ghostwriter, and once a week I would get on a call just like this, and we would speak a chapter because I didn't know how to formulate a book. I didn't know how to write all my content down. I just thought, well, I'll just type a bunch of stuff out. So they would record it, translate it, or transcribe it, put it down in paper, write it out, send it to me. We would work on it the next week, and then the next week I would work on my next chapter. And it took me about 6 months. And I was able to finish a book. And I was in school, I was the dyslexic, resource English, resource reading classes, where my high school guidance counselor told me college isn't for everyone. And you should be a
And he
construction.
was looking you in the eye saying, Greg, college isn't for everyone, just so you know.
Yes. Yes. I'm like, what are you talking about? And yes. And so what that experience to actually finish something taught me was that I wasn't my past, some of the same experiences you might be going through, but I finished it and I was an author and we made it a bestseller on Amazon. And I was like, okay, there's actually things that I don't have to live to what anybody else told me. Those are our unconscious commitments or our subconscious programmings
Mm-hmm.
that something happens and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, or maybe I couldn't. So it's just one of those extra breakthroughs.
It's amazing how something that long ago still sticks with us today,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like things that
Psychology
happen
says
in
that.
our, go ahead. Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you go.
Well, yeah, I want you to say what you're
Yeah.
about to say. But it's amazing that how much, and how just having this conversation with my wife, actually, how much of our childhood experiences control how we manage and act today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at 35, 45, 50 years old, right? And
Yeah.
you were just saying psychology says,
Well, there's two things about this. Well, first, psychology says that 85 to 90% of everything that you'll ever learn how to do, you did. This is your personality and what the world meant to you, happened before 8 years old. And as humans, we're mimickers. We're born with this very special skill that sits underneath our eyes called a mirror neuron. And a mirror neuron is the ability to look at somebody or something and learn it. Like imagine we're cavemen. And a caveman's running across the valley. He's being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. You're on the top of a hill and you can't see the tiger. If you can't see that he's scared and start running, you're dead. So we developed this skill set. So we're able to look at what somebody's doing, how they're walking, what they're eating, and we learned how to walk. We learned how to speak by mimicking what other people were doing. Other than that, evolution, or not evolution, but our ability to learn wouldn't have gotten very far. Because if our kids had to relearn everything brand new every time, we just wouldn't grow very fast.
Sure.
So we were given this skill. But it also means that everything that we learned from the lens of a little kid, and we learned from whatever happened when our parents were angry. It's like this thing about money. Most people have this unconscious commitments. We call them upper limits, higher and lower. But let's just assume that one day, for the sake of this conversation, that you're sitting around the dinner table and your mom walks in and she says, "Hey, did you hear the Johnsons, the next door neighbors that don't have a lot of money? Did you hear them fighting last night? And I heard they're getting a divorce." And your mind is trying to figure out, what does money mean? And so the psychology of our brain starts to make those neural connections and says, wow, if we don't have very much money, probably is going to mean that we're going to be a divorce. 6 months later, your dad's talking about your favorite friends, the Thompsons, who have the boat and the car and all the nice things, and they're getting a divorce. And he says something like, it just goes to show you that money doesn't solve problems, that they could be fighting more about money. And in that moment, your mind agreed with them. It said, oh, now I understand, Dad, that having too much money causes problems. For the rest of your life, if you don't learn what that is and rewrite or unwrite them, you'll float. Not having enough, because if you don't have too much, you're going to not be happy and be divorced. And you get here and your upper limit kicks in and you start to shut yourself down. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you're like, God, it's so good. And you're either worried that it's going to collapse, or you knew that you've destroyed things later in life. You're like, man, I kind of just totally destroyed something that was really good because I just didn't feel comfortable.
Well, as you're saying this, dude, no exaggeration, I'm like, is he explaining me right now? I'm like, did he just, is he in my head explaining exactly what I've going through over the past 3-4 years?
It could be. It's just how humans work.
Sure.
And so that those unconscious commitments, those invisible barriers, I call them stalking shadows. It's stalking what had happened when I was 7, not having to experience it because I'm an adult now, and asking, is that actually really true? Is there something more true than that? And allowing the mind, and in neuroscience, it's remapping the neural connections around things.
Yeah.
It's opening for new possibilities. It doesn't have to look like that. Going back to the nomadic piece, I worked off my laptop out of my own home for 5 years.
Yeah.
I was nomadic in a box.
That's me. That's me right now. I work out of my laptop in my home for 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. You're nomadic.
Yeah.
You're just created an environment that you're nomadic in. And I wanted to learn what it was like to be out of my environment. When I moved to Mexico, I didn't know anybody. I didn't speak the language.
Yeah. Can you speak Spanish a little bit now?
Enough to get along. A little bit. I learned how to speak money.
Un
poquito. I learned how to speak money, and that was good enough.
Okay. Interesting. I have a question about that.
Yeah.
You're yes, you have your perspective and your side of things, but your wife, she has to be on board with this too, right? So, and a lot, during a divorce, especially, there's a lot of friction. Mm-hmm. I'm not around a lot of divorce, truthfully. I haven't personally experienced it. I believe it or not, not a lot of my friends have really gone through it either. I just happen to be in that circle where it just hasn't happened. I mean, it's just the way, just fall in that spot. And so my question is, during divorce, there's a lot of friction. Obviously, I know people and they've talked to me about it. How do you get past that and have a real conversation like you did about you being nomadic, her being the obviously primary caregiver as the mother, mm-hmm. And work through that? I mean, it couldn't have just been one conversation and then it was.
No, this process that we've been on is 8.5, 9 years.
Okay.
And, in the selfish divorce, I mapped out the like top 9 things that I looked at, um, that were really important to me. And because of those, which are, um, some of them are like just respecting privacy. Her business was not my business. And but being supportive in dating and being supportive in business, or these things. And over time, we both fell into this place where what was best for the kids. I say this where I'm holding my tongue a little bit, because a lot of people just say, well, I'm just doing what's best for the kids. And that meant that they're kind of like projecting on them. They're just giving extra money, and they're doing things. And what was really best for our kids is that they still had a mom and dad that cared about each other, and they
Yeah.
knew that they were loved. And so everything else was formulated around this. And so flash forward 8 years, it was probably 2 years before that, where my daughter, one Christmas Eve, because we were spending Christmas at different homes, right? One year they'd be at mine, and one year they'd be at hers.
Yeah.
My daughter was maybe 10, and she said, "Hey, Dad, would you sleep at our house on Christmas Eve?" And my ego and brain says, "No."
Right.
And then I'm
Instantly.
like, "Well, if it means something to you, what does that mean to me?" It's only my ego saying, "I'm not sleeping at their house." And I was like, "Okay." So I slept there. And then the next year I did it again. And then there were a couple of times, I can't remember exactly what it was, maybe an Easter or something, where it happened again. I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty comfortable. And first, going nomadic, I didn't actually think that I would stay in their home. I just thought I'd rent someplace next door, or, within a few miles. And then I just happened to be coming through town, and it just didn't make sense. And they're just like, "Hey, just stay at our house." It's like, well, let's give it a shot.
Hmm.
And then a few times, my former spouse and her husband wanted to go on vacation. So they would leave for vacation when I was here. So then I got more comfortable in staying in their home when they weren't here, and it just kind of kept flowing.
I mean, you have to realize that this is totally out of the ordinary. Like listening to this, and somebody listening to it is probably like, "What? Like, come on!"
Yeah.
And
When
like,
I do, I
and
do.
and this is coming from 100% non-judgmental
Sure,
place, just so
sure,
you
sure.
know that.
Oh no, I
It's
know.
coming from a more of a an intrigued, interested about
Yeah.
it, because there's three people that have to agree on this, right? That
Mhm.
her is she remarried?
She is for
Yes.
six
Okay.
years now. Yeah.
6 year. Okay. So her husband, her,
Mhm.
and you, and then the kids have to also get okay, or in the environment too. So it's just an
Yeah.
interesting thing. And I think that what part of it is you've gone through such deep work on yourself
Mhm.
that you can help guide everybody in that situation, or be that space, the calm space where like, this is okay. Like this is working, and this is, this is best for our situation.